We're going to get started here. My name is Paul Andrew. I'm a program manager in Office 365, and we're going to be talking about Microsoft 365 network performance testing, scoring, and recommendations, and some new tooling we're bringing to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center to help with that. Okay, so slow performance is something that you're used to dealing with at home, maybe at conferences. Networking's not always what you expect. You shouldn't have to deal with that at your business and with Office 365. With a good network design and commercial ISPs, your users should have great performance when using Office 365, and networking and good network design is the key to that. We have published some network connectivity principles and best practices, and we're just now building some tooling to help customers to be able to test and align and get specific design recommendations to align with those principles. We've released a proof of concept tool called Office 365 Network Onboarding Tool, and from customers that have been using that and testing their networks and how they align with our connectivity principles, we've seen about 40% of them have some kind of actionable recommendations that they're getting about how they can improve their network performance, the network that they have control over. So the first question I get usually about this space is, why isn't Microsoft taking care of this? What is Microsoft doing to improve performance? So Microsoft is doing a lot. We invest a lot of money on network presence and peering across the world. The little map diagram shows different locations where Microsoft's network is expanded to. It is one of the largest networks in the world. We also have a highly distributed service front door infrastructure for Office 365 workloads. So when you sign up for Office 365, you can connect to whichever is the closest service front door to where your user location is. You're not required to connect to any particular one. And we help your clients connect to that closest front door. And in fact, we have over 100 locations where we have those service front doors. And they connect back to our data centers, which we have in about 50 locations. But those network connectivity sites where Microsoft's network is, we have those in over 160 locations worldwide, and we peer with upwards of 4,000 different networks. So it's a massive network, a massive infrastructure, and we're working to grow that and get that closer and closer to users. But on the other side of this egress location, outside of between your ISP and your WAN, there's still a lot that you can do to improve that performance. And our guidance is all about encouraging you to shift this blue dot and move it closer to Microsoft's network, and then avoid any of those design issues that may be there in that network, and be able to get that ultimate performance. Okay, so what have we been doing? We have these connectivity principles that we've actually published for a couple of years, which talk about how to identify Office 365 traffic and then treat it differently from generic internet web browsing traffic that your users are doing. When you're connecting to Office 365, it's like a data center that you're leasing from Microsoft. It's a whole service, but the infrastructure piece is like a data center, and we encourage you to treat it with network connectivity more like it's your data center that we're operating for you than an unknown or as yet unknown website that one of your users may be connecting to. So our principles are all around that, and we've published a web service to expose the IP addresses and URLs so that you can identify what is Office 365 in your network infrastructure when our users connecting to Office 365. We've also created the Office 365 Network Partner Program, which has a large number of vendors who have signed up to use that method of identifying Office 365 traffic, and to give you the opportunity to be able to shortcut any security processing or otherwise that's on the wire and get users connected into Microsoft data centers for that. And then I just mentioned before, we have this network onboarding tool proof of concept, which came out in January of this year, where we're working at some tests, some measurements, where we can provide insights for customers to get aligned with those network connectivity principles. Okay, so we're taking that work in that proof of concept and we're bringing that into the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. where we're adding a new menu option into the health part of the navigation in the admin center. And in that network performance menu option, we're going to show you what we can detect from existing network telemetry that's in Office 365 that we have as part of running the service, what we can detect and give you specific targeted recommendations about improving the network design. So you'll be able to set up admins, network administrators to come in and see this information and see what's there and provide your own information and make it more accurate. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so here's my demo machine. I'm running in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, and in the navigation here, I've got this new menu option for network performance. It shows this overview page, which is giving me a map view of Office locations where network telemetry is coming from. This anonymous telemetry is just part of what we use to run the service. It's part of how we identify when we need to set up new service front doors, how we connect user machines into the right service front door that's close to them. And you can see for this demo customer, this is demo data. I've got these 5 locations, and when I look at this map, the first thing I want to do is zoom in on these worst performing locations and try and figure out why. This Philadelphia location has a score of just 18% here. So if I take a look at that, I can click in and see some of the data that we have captured for this location. You can see Philadelphia over here where the Office location is. And you can also see these pins around it. Here's a SharePoint service front door. Here's some Exchange service front doors that I could be connecting to, but my users in Philadelphia are not. They're connecting across the country to their network egress that we've identified here over in Seattle, Washington. Now this is demo data. I live in Redmond, Washington, so I picked the cross-country node there. And here's the nodes that they would actually be connecting to in Seattle, Washington. Because their network egress is there, this is the closest we can get them, which is here for Exchange and here for SharePoint. So pretty clearly, I've got this visual showing me my network is just too long. My backhaul before I get to egress is too long, and there's something there that I want to look into. So we're adding this network score as well to give you a number to represent that. The network score here is correlated with the user experience related to your network connectivity. So if you have fantastic network connectivity, you're going to get a high score up to 100. If you have really poor networking connectivity, you're going to get a low score. And you can use this to compare different locations and the user experience that's driven from that network connectivity at each of those locations. How we come up with that score is we do measurements for Exchange and for SharePoint and for Microsoft Teams separately. For Exchange, it's most reliant on TCP latency, and so here's a latency number associated with Exchange. For SharePoint, SharePoint is most reliant on the network throughput or download speed. And this is simply if I am opening a document on my local machine and it's in my OneDrive folder and happens to be not synced with my local machine, it's got to go and get that off the OneDrive server before I can load it into Word or PowerPoint. So when I double click on that, the instantaneous amount of bandwidth that I can summon from my PC to the OneDrive server is super important for me as a OneDrive user. And this is the measurement that we're taking here to rate your SharePoint experience. For Microsoft Teams, it's all about media. It's about my audio and my video, and we use these UDP measurements of latency, jitter, and packet loss in order to be able to identify what is the call quality likely to be for users in this location. Okay, so that's how we come up with our score. And the network score for the location is simply the average of these three for the 3 workloads. We show a score history here. Because we measure this every day, we can show this history in this blue line. You can see it's hovering around the same number. And then we introduce a benchmark of customers near you and what their score is. In this case, you can see it's much higher. And we show that over history as well. Take a look at this headline of comparing to other customers near me. Your network performance for this location is worse than 97% of nearby customers. Okay, so most people in Philadelphia have pretty good experience with Office 365, but we're down here at 18, we don't have great experience at all. All right, so what can we do about that? And that's where we get to these network insights. Now we have two kinds of these network insights. Some of them, we just have an insight that there is something wrong. The network is not performing poorly. We've identified that. It's sort of what you can identify by looking at the clients, but at a network layer. Others, we can recommend a specific action, some design change that you can make or action you can take on your network to improve the performance. And we call those out as having a recommended action. So there's some here that have a recommended action. We have impact from proxy servers, we have SSL inspection, and there's that backhauled network egress. Backhaul is the term we use for the user back to their egress location being a long way. It's hauling that network traffic to that egress. And we've got some here that require further research. Use of a non-optimal Exchange Online front door, use of a non-optimal SharePoint Online service front door. These are both obvious from the backhaul. They are 100% related to having that backhaul there. We've also got poor UDP quality, which I didn't know from just looking at the map, so this is a new issue. It does require further research. I don't know why we've got poor UDP quality. And then obviously there's some other customers have better performance than I do. I know what that's related to. It's going to be that same backhaul, and we saw that in this table as well. So some of these insights are related, some of them are new, and we define them in terms of whether there's a specific action we've found or if they are just a identification of a problem that you need to look into. Okay, so we looked at all of this, and there's a lot of high-level guidance here. If I'm a network engineer and I'm troubleshooting an issue, I actually really want to see the test results, and I want to see it for myself. A lot of times when you're looking at a network performance issue, you've got to look at all of the tests to be able to come to an opinion of what's likely to be the root cause. So we provide those details on the separate pane. Here are the test results that we used in order to come up with these insights, these recommendations, and this map. They're all listed here in your standard tabular form that you might be familiar with from other network testing tools. Okay, so I can click on these and dive into them and take a look and get all the details that I need there. All right, so we took a look at this location. Let's go back out to the overview page for the tenant. You can see I've got a score here as well. This score is a weighted average across all of the locations. So it's telling me a score for my tenant for networking, but it's really not giving me anything I can action. It's really just telling me, here's how all of your locations, you might have 200 or 1,000 of these locations, here's how they relate. I also have average numbers for each workload. If you know that Teams is not working on your infrastructure across all your locations, you might see the Teams number much lower here and get that number, that numerical evidence, which is not just your users telling you about that. Again, we've got this history that we can see, and then we have recommended actions shown as here on this tab, where I can go in and filter these recommended actions, decide which ones I'm going to start working on. I can see them for all of the locations there. And then the other piece here is we showed you locations on this map on the overview. Now this is very approximate information from the network telemetry that we have. And so if you want to get better advice and more accurate recommendations, you can go in and add details into those locations here. And so I can manage these locations by adding some detail. I can enter my building information with a street address. Here it is. And I can go ahead and put in some extra detail. Maybe we can allow you to get in your egress IP information here, which will allow us to filter that telemetry better. Okay, I want to show you one other thing here. So I've just switched over to another tenant. This is separate data. And we've actually been running this testing and these insights in Microsoft IT over about 12,000 devices. Not all Microsoft devices in our network, but about 12,000 of them. And you can see here, first we have a very large presence in the Pacific Northwest. with a lot of signals coming from there. But also we have a lot of green spots. I'm very happy with this, this map here. There's a couple orange there that I'll need to look into, but it's just showing our use of this data and ability to run it on real machines. We haven't yet deployed this. It's coming to preview in the first quarter of 2020, and so it's not available immediately right now, but I have a preview program that I want to talk to you about and how to sign up in just a minute. Okay, so I talked about these new concepts of what a network insight is. It's interesting to think about how we came up with these network insights. They're largely from many of us working with customers on troubleshooting actual performance issues. Some of my friends who've done this are in the audience here. And what we do is we try to find common issues and then find a specific test that can identify if that design issue is in this customer's network. And so if we can find that test, we have a measurement and then we have a threshold, we can go and run that test at many locations and say, hey, if this test is past this threshold, that design issue must exist. And that's when we can provide a network insight, which may or may not have a recommended action, or it may require further research. There's also this concept of the network score, where we have a rating of the impact of network connectivity between the user's machine and Microsoft's network on the user's experience. So a high number here is going to have fantastic network experience. I know when I see 80 or above in these tests, users are going to have great experience with Office 365. If I see numbers below 40 or so, I know the users are going to be complaining in that organization. It's a very transferable way of me being able to identify what the impact of that networking is. All right, so let's talk about this private preview that we have coming. It is planned to start in the first quarter of 2020. It will have limited participation, and we have a sign-up form for registering interest with it. It's best suited for customers who've already deployed Office 365 and can make use of that existing telemetry that we have. We do intend to expand this for new customers because obviously getting your network design right when you first start is critical to a good experience onboarding with Office 365. And we're interested in highly distributed networks that have interesting challenges in them. It's also worth noting this preview. It's also worth noting this preview is only fixed on that health network performance node on the admin center. It doesn't impact any of your other data or any of the other elements of the admin center for Office 365. And so you can ask for it, turn it on. We have a separate role for network administrators that you can use. Should not impact your existing operation of your tenant in other ways, other than giving you some great ideas about network design. We will have a 500 seat minimum for starting out getting customers in, yeah, I encourage you to register interest. I will come back to you when we're able to add you onto that preview. All right, so I have my summary here I want to talk about. We have had a network onboarding tool available since January this year. We've been having customers run that, and we've got some good statistics seeing what kind of network tests and issues people are seeing, which is really interesting. You can try that out today. I've got the URL there, connectivity.office.com. And I showed you the demo of bringing this network performance into the admin center. This is something we've just announced this week at Ignite. First announced this on Monday. And you can take a look at the announcements at URL aka.ms/netignite, N-E-T-I-G-N-I-T-E. Take a look at a little bit that we've written about that. It also has a link to the preview program there if you missed writing it down from the slide net preview that I had just before. So if you do have questions about this preview or about this feature before coming ahead, I'd love to hear from you and get feedback. We're very keen to get feedback as we're in this preview program, both from people in the preview and other people. My Twitter alias is @PNDRW, or you can contact me on LinkedIn. Would love to hear from you. All right, I have 1 minute for questions if anyone wants to do that while we're here. Otherwise, I'm going to be in the booth, which is actually right here. We have our network performance in Office 365 infrastructure in the booth. If you guys want to come along, anyone wants to talk about their network or our network or connecting between the two. All right, thank you.